It was a night soaked in the kind of bone-chilling rain that seemed to seep into every crack of the city. The streets glistened under flickering lampposts, casting long, eerie shadows that danced with the wind. Commuters hurried through the downpour, clutching umbrellas and muttering under their breath as they made their way to the old terminal. The clock at the station read 11:40 p.m., and the last train of the night was expected soon. Charlie sat slumped in a corner of the station, invisible to most. His clothes were tattered, his beard thick with neglect, and his once strong hands trembled as he pulled his ragged coat tighter against his body. The years had not been kind to him. Once a man of promise. With a career as an engineer and a family he adored, life had somehow unraveled beneath him. The details of how it all fell apart were blurred now, lost somewhere between the whiskey bottles and endless nights on the streets. Yet tonight, even amidst the constant ache of hunger and the familiar loneliness, something gnawed at him, a feeling, a premonition, like an unspoken whisper in the back of his mind. The station was busy despite the late hour, people coming and going, oblivious to the man huddled in the shadows. He watched them with tired eyes, the way they hurried, how none of them dared to linger for too long in the cold. They had homes to get to, lives to return to, things Charlie had long since lost. A shrill whistle echoed in the distance. The train was coming. Its soft rumble could be felt in the ground beneath his feet, a slow, rhythmic hum that grew louder with each passing moment. A few passengers stirred, preparing themselves for the ride, adjusting bags and checking their phones. For Charlie, the train meant nothing, it was just part of the background, another reminder of a world that moved on without him. Then, through the rain-soaked haze, Charlie noticed something that made his heart skip a beat. Far down the tracks, just beyond the dim glow of the station lights, there was a figure. At first, he thought his tired eyes were playing tricks on him. He squinted through the rain, wiping the droplets from his face with the back of his hand. No, it wasn't a trick. It was a child. A small figure, maybe 5 or 6 years old, lying motionless on the tracks, Charlie's breath caught in his throat. He blinked, hoping the sight would vanish, that it was some cruel illusion conjured by his weary mind. But the child was still there, vulnerable and helpless, while the train's whistle grew louder and louder. His body reacted before his mind did. Charlie scrambled to his feet, his heart pounding in his chest. He stumbled forward, his legs weak from days of malnutrition, but somehow he pushed through. Panic coursed through him as he glanced toward the train's headlights now visible in the distance, their glow cutting through the rainy night like the eyes of a predator. "Stop!" Charlie's voice cracked as he shouted. He could barely recognize the sound of his own voice, hoarse and desperate. "Stop the train!" People on the platform turned their heads in confusion, some startled by the sudden outburst. They saw the ragged figure of Charlie running toward the edge of the platform, and a few shook their heads, dismissing him as just another crazy homeless man. After all, he looked the part, wild-eyed, unkempt, and frantic. But Charlie didn't care. He had no time to explain, the train was coming faster now. Its roar drowned out the soft sounds of the rain, and the tracks began to vibrate under its weight. The headlights grew larger, brighter, an unstoppable force barreling toward them. Charlie was running full tilt now, his lungs burning, legs aching. "Stop the train!" He screamed again, his voice breaking through the noise. Some passengers gasped, finally noticing the small form lying on the tracks. A murmur of panic rippled through the crowd, and a few people rushed to the edge of the platform, their eyes widening in horror. The conductor, too far away to see what was happening, blew the horn, a long, mournful wail that sent shivers down Charlie's spine. It was too fast. Too close. The train wouldn't stop in time. Charlie leaped from the platform, landing hard on the gravel below. His knees buckled, but he pushed himself forward, crawling over the slick rocks as the train bore down on him. The wind whipped at his face, the rain stinging his eyes, but he forced himself to keep moving. There she was, a little girl, her blonde hair wet and matted against her pale skin, her tiny body limp. Charlie reached her just as the train's horn blared again, a sound so loud it seemed to split the night in two. With a grunt, he scooped her up into his arms, her fragile form light as air. For a brief second, time seemed to freeze, the train's headlights blinding, the platform crowd holding their breath, and Charlie's heart pounding so loudly he could hear nothing else. Then, with a final burst of strength, Charlie heaved the girl up and threw her toward the platform. She landed with a soft thud, her body rolling safely out of harm's way, but Charlie didn't move fast enough. The train was upon him, its massive steel body screeching as the conductor slammed on the emergency brakes. The world exploded into chaos, sparks flying, metal grinding against metal, and the smell of burning rubber filling the air. Charlie felt the force of the train slam into him, tossing him like a rag doll. His body hit the gravel, rolling and tumbling until everything went black. When Charlie awoke, it was quiet. Too quiet. His head throbbed, his body ached in ways he didn't think possible, and for a moment, he wasn't sure if he was alive or dead. Slowly, painfully, he opened his eyes. He was lying on the platform. The rain had stopped, and above him, the sky was just beginning to lighten with the first hints of dawn. The station was eerily still, the only sound a soft murmur of voices nearby. He tried to sit up, groaning as pain shot through his ribs. His vision swam, but gradually, the world came into focus. The train was there, derailed just a few feet from where he lay. Its front end was crumpled against the barriers, the brakes having finally engaged just moments after it had struck him. Charlie blinked, confused. He was alive. Somehow, miraculously, he was alive. Then he saw her, the little girl. She was sitting up on the platform, her wide eyes staring at him. Her mother knelt beside her, sobbing with relief, holding her daughter close. For a long moment, no one spoke. The crowd that had gathered earlier stood frozen, watching the scene unfold as if they couldn't quite believe what had just happened. The mother looked up, her tear-streaked face filled with gratitude. She rushed over to Charlie, kneeling beside him. "You saved her," she whispered, her voice trembling. You saved my baby." Charlie could only nod, his throat too tight to speak. Tears welled up in his eyes as the gravity of what had just happened finally hit him. It wasn't long before the station was flooded with emergency personnel, paramedics, police, and workers from the rail company. They swarmed the area, checking the train, helping the injured, and clearing the wreckage. Through it all, Charlie sat quietly, watching as the world moved around him. He had done it. He had saved a life. The little girl's mother never left his side, holding his hand tightly as the paramedics checked him over. "You're a hero," she whispered, her voice choked with emotion. "I don't know how to thank you." Charlie shook his head, tears still streaming down his face. "I'm no hero," he rasped, his voice barely above a whisper. I just did what anyone would do." But deep down, Charlie knew that wasn't true. He had been invisible for so long, lost in the cracks of a city that didn't care. He had lived each day wondering if his life had any meaning, if anyone would even notice if he disappeared. Yet tonight, in a moment of pure instinct, he had found purpose again, as the dawn broke over the city. Painting the sky in hues of pink and orange, Charlie realized something profound. His life, so broken, so far from what it had once been, still had value. He had saved a child, and in doing so, he had saved a part of himself. The train had stopped, but for Charlie, this was just the beginning of something new.